to you about 2-point perspective drawing. First, let's talk about materials. I have my paper taped down. You will need a pencil. Any kind is fine. This is just a number 2. I don't have to do any shading today, so this is fine to use. You will need some sort of straight edge. I like to use this triangle of my dad's, but you can always use some type of ruler as well. I don't use the metal because of the reflection on the camera. And then you also need an eraser. Any kind of eraser is fine. I like the smaller ones here that I use to get specific lines, but whatever you have is fine. I would definitely recommend a white eraser as opposed to a pink one. Pink erasers leave pink marks. So when you have your materials gathered, I tend to go ahead and tape down my paper, not only for filming, but because it's easier as well. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time, just in case my dogs come in and start whining. These are not professional videos by any means. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my first line down, which is a horizon line. And if you've not watched the other videos, I'll do a little bit of refresh here. Your horizon line is a line that separates the area that you're looking up at and the area that you're looking down on. If you were thinking of a painting or a drawing, this would be the foreground, that would be the background. Okay? So again, everything above the horizon line, you're looking up. Everything below the horizon line, you're looking down. And that will help you as you go. Because this is 2-point perspective, I want 2 vanishing points. And in 2-point perspective, I tend to put them at the edges of the paper. Remember, my teaching career dealt with high school students, so I usually try to teach about that level. But actually, you know, middle school could get this, and definitely adults, and probably some upper elementary students as well. So feel free to use it as you wish. All right, remember what the vanishing points are. The vanishing points are the lines, or excuse me, the vanishing points are the points to which all the receding lines tend to end. They go back to these vanishing points. Let's start really simple with some cubes. Now, if you've done 1-point perspective with me, you know that the first thing you do is draw an entire square. With 2-point perspective, you are actually looking at the corner of the object. So we're going to start by drawing a line right here, not too close to either point, and we're doing it right on the horizon line. Now remember, I draw dark so that you're able to see it, and you want to draw lighter so you can erase. Also know that sometimes the camera will distort the line using a T-square type instrument, so it is straight on my paper. If it is not quite vertical on here, you've got to forgive me for that one. That's actually the camera. All right, that being said, so this is the corner of my cube. The lines that go back into the distance, we know are always going to end at the vanishing point. So what I do is I go to the top and the bottom of my line here. And I'm going to line up my straight edge with the bottom of this line and with the vanishing point. Okay? And I'm going to draw it back. Again, draw lightly as you go. And then I'm also going to do it from the top, also to the right vanishing point. So let's get that started. All right, and you can see how they go from these edges here, or these ends here, to the vanishing point. Now, I'm going to use the other side, because when you're using 2-point perspective, you must use 2 points. All right, I used to have a lot of students that would draw and use the 1 point and wonder why it didn't look right. Okay, again, from the bottom and from the top. Okay, and you see how that goes back. Now, I've drawn the line all the way back for teaching purposes. You can see how I get a little bit lighter as I go, and that's because I know I'm going to have to erase it. So if you think of this as the corner, say of a building, and you've got one wall going this way and one wall going that way, I do want to end it off. And I go back to my vertical line, and I'm actually going to line it up on this and slide it back without tilting it either way. I want these two vertical lines to be parallel. And then I'm going to draw that in like that. Now I'm going to go ahead, I can probably use a big eraser, and I'm going to get rid of this here because this is just excess lines. Once you get good at it, you won't even have to draw the line all the way as long as your straight edge is lined up with it. Okay, so I'm also going to end it on this side now. So I do the same thing. I line up my straight edge just like that with that first vertical line I drew, and I'm going to slide it back without moving it like this or this. So I'm doing my best to keep all my verticals vertical, even if the camera doesn't show it like that. Okay, then again, I'm going to come up here. Sorry, erasing will shake the camera sometimes. But I'm going to get rid of these excess lines because I don't need them anymore, and as I fill the paper they're going to get confusing. Okay, so we have a cube. Only issue with this is that my cube is not supposed to be transparent. So after I get this little tail here that I missed, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the horizon line behind my cube. This gives it a little depth as well, because when I'm finished, it actually looks like it's a solid cube sitting on the ground because the bottom is below my horizon line. All right, so that is a cube if I start with my corner bisecting or going across the horizon line. That's not always going to be the case. So let's try something that's maybe a little closer in the foreground here. Same thing, take my straight edge, and again, I line this up with the edge of the paper as well to make sure that it's parallel. Start my line right there. And resist the urge to make that into a square. It just tends to be the tendency with everyone. They want to complete a square. You don't want to do that because it's not correct. So same thing, going from the bottom, I'm lining it up with the vanishing point and drawing my line back lightly. Then I have to do the same thing on the other side. Now, you might get in a situation where it goes through one of the other forms. So here's where you can draw the line part of the way back and stop. As long as your straight edge is on the corner of the cube and up here on the vanishing point, right there, you're okay. You don't have to draw the line back all the way, and it saves you some erasing. All right, I'm going to do it from the top. This one I'm going to draw all the way back because it's a shorter distance. All right, and then here's a situation where it would go through the cube like that if I drew from here to here. And I be honest, I don't like all that erasing. So as long as I have it lined up here at the top of the line and here with the point, I'm just going to draw it part of the way back. Occasionally I'll get someone ask me, well, which point do you know how to use? I always tell my students, try both of them. All right, if one works, good. If it doesn't, then the other one probably will. And you'll find that after you learn the rules of perspective, they kind of get ingrained in your brain and you just do it automatically. So, okay, when we made this one, we did this line. We took the sides back to the vanishing point, and then we ended it off like that. Okay, so let's go step by step. I drew my lines back to the vanishing point. Now I'm going to draw my verticals. One on this side. Line it up. And one on this side. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of my extra lines. I apologize for the shaking. And right over here as well. Okay, I don't have to erase any lines behind this because it's not on the horizon line. It's down a little lower in my eyesight. Now, if you look at this, you'll see that there's just something wrong with that. That is not complete. All right, it's obvious that it's missing the top. My students, again, their tendency is to go ahead and just like draw lines on there to complete it. But here's the thing. Your lines are either going to be vertical or they have to go to the points. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to look at this corner here and this corner right there. Okay? Well, I can't take this corner back to this point. That's a line I just erased. So I'm going to line it up with the opposite point. And again, I can draw my line all the way back, but I'm not going to because I don't want to go through this. So let's just guesstimate how long I want it. Now, again, another mistake that my students make, they're like, oh, well, I need to close this up, so they draw this line. Don't draw lines that don't go to the vanishing points, unless, of course, they're vertical lines. So I take this one. I don't want to line it up with the right one because I already did that and erased it. So there you go. And I just draw it until it meets that. And I get rid of the extra line there. All right, so there's the top of it right there. I just used the opposite points. Now, depending where you place it under your horizon line or on your paper, this top might be really skinny. It might be really wide. I will tell you that the closer you bring this top, this plane, to the horizon line, the more difficult it is. You can do it, but it's not easy. All right, so we've drawn a cube on the horizon line below, so let's try one at the top. Do you remember the first step? First step is to draw that vertical line. Now, I also try not to do them right above the vanishing points either. That just makes it difficult. So here we go. I start with my vertical line. All right, if you remember, the next step is to create the sides of the cube. And you create the sides by going back to the points. So I'm going to use this point to create this side. And again, lining it up with the point and the end of the line, like that. Then I have to do this one. And again, I'm just going to draw partial line because I don't want it to go through this. And I stop. As long as it's lined up with the point, I can do that. One thing about perspective, it is not freehand. It's a mechanical type drawing. I am not an architect. I claim to know nothing about mechanical drawing, but I do know how to do perspective. So I've had comments sometimes where people who are architects and do mechanical drawings try to tell me what I did wrong, and that's all fine and good because you know that stuff and I don't. This is just my high school and beginner level. So Here we go. So I did both my sides. I get rid of my extra lines so they don't get confusing later on. And as you draw and as you get better at this, you don't have to draw the lines as long as I have been doing. That's, just for teaching. All right. So taking a look at this form right here, what is missing? Okay, the bottom is missing, and the reason that I would see the bottom, because this is my horizon line or eye level. I'm looking upward. So if I'm looking up, I'm going to see underneath. Just like I did this one, I'm going to use my opposite points. I go from this corner, line it up with the right point, like this. And then I go to this corner, line it up with the left point. And then I just stop when I get to the intersection. That way, again, less erasing. All right, this is the basis for anything you want to make in two-point perspective. What we'll go ahead and do, and I'll make it fairly quick, is I'll show you how to put a cube on top of a cube and how to do one that looks like it's stacked or behind it. And then we'll be done with this one and we'll move on. I'm going to do one that looks like it's on the top of here. Again, I don't see the top. So I start with my vertical line. I can't do anything to the bottom of that line because it's not visible. So I take lines back from the top on both sides. Line it up with the vanishing points. I do not freehand them. They go back to the point. And again, if you were be able to see through this line continues. Because you can't see it, then you don't have to do anything to it. This is fairly easy. All right, my next step is to end my cube. So do the same step over and over. Line it up. Make sure it is vertical. Same thing, line it up. And it looks like mine are a little bit off there, so be careful with that. I stopped using the corner of the triangle on the paper. Okay, so now this one is actually sitting on top of this one. What if I want to do one on here? Well, here is my flat plane. So when I do my first line, let's make sure that's parallel this time. Turn this around a little bit. When I make my first line, the bottom of it has to fall somewhere within this plane. So it actually looks like it's sitting on it. Once that line is there and the bottom of it is within that plane, I follow the same steps. I draw my lines back to the vanishing point. Again, as long as you're lined up, don't have to draw it all the way. I highly recommend that when you do this, you take some time and you start placing cubes around the entire paper, because where you place them is going to determine what they look like. Are they going to be above the horizon line? Are they going to be low? Is the top or bottom going to be skinny? Is it going to be wide? Again, it all depends on how you place it. I'm not going to fill this up because you will be bored silly and trying not to make these videos too long. Okay, so that's where we are. Once you learn how to do this, you can move on to the next video, and the steps are a little bit more advanced. I really, really recommend doing these in order. If you try to start with 2 or 3, you may be able to do them with me, but when it comes to being on your own, you're not going to get it because you don't have the basics. Okay, there we go. Thank you, and I'll see you in part 2.